Yo, you right? How's it going? Welcome to the video. If you're new to the channel, which you will be because it's new, please consider hitting the subscribe button for two reasons. One, these videos are going to be ace and they're going to really help you with your golf. And secondly, if you don't, somewhere in the world, a baby kitten is going to get run over.
Just look at everything and choose your kind of thing.
In this video, I want to talk about how you nail your setup and your alignment forever. I know what you're thinking, boring! Yes, setup and alignment is very, very boring, but it doesn't matter if you're a really high handicapper, a mid handicapper, or a low handicapper, or even a golf pro. I've seen really, really good golfers get their setup incorrect. And if you get something as simple as weight distribution at address incorrect, you are curtains, okay? So I'm going to go through the process of how you might get those things absolutely nailed so that has no implications on the rest of your swing, all right? Most poor amateur golfers have their practice swing next to the golf ball here, then have a look at their target, take a little step in, guess how far away from the ball they should be, and that is no way to do it, okay? So if you were to try and get yourself into this position here and then try and get the club the correct distance from the ball, you have no way of gauging that if you use your feet as a point of reference. So if that's the wrong process, what's the correct process? Well, first you need to get the club in behind the ball first. Now, there's a little bit more to it than just putting the club in behind the ball first. You need to go through a little bit of a process first. So first you need to know which one is your dominant eye in order to line the club face up with something in front of you. How do you do that? Make a triangle, both eyes open, line that up with the ball. If I close my left eye, for me, my right eye is dominant, so the ball stays in exactly the same place. If I close my right eye, which is actually quite tricky, the ball moves dramatically. So once you've got your dominant eye correct, what you can now do is you can draw a line through the ball and then through the shaft to your target line, draw a line back, and in front of you should be something there, okay? So now you can get the club lined up with that. The reason that's important is that you're going to use the club as a point of reference for distance from the ball. Okay, so what that would look like to you is like this. So you can see there's the ball, you're going to cover the golf ball with the handle, and then cover the target, which is the telegraph pole, with the shaft. Then you can draw a line back down, okay? So once you've drawn that line back down, you can see there's a little mark just inside the line of that leaf there. From there now, I can line the face up with that point in front of you, providing that leaf doesn't blow away. Maybe pick something you know isn't going to do that. Put that club in there. Now I'm not using my feet as the point of reference. I'm just running them at 90 degrees relative to the face line, okay? So we've got the club in. Now, if I get the handle sort of roughly at the right height, which is for an iron somewhere there, somewhere near the tummy button. Dying. Okay, I'm better. So the iron should be roughly up at the belly button height. The driver will point lower, more towards sort of the belt height. So this will get up nicely into this. We've got the club face pointing through that line. Now I set my feet at right angles. Now the important part about this bit is now I can really feel where my weight distribution should be. So like I said before, if I'm miles away from it and I have to lean into the golf ball, that can screw everything up, okay? So we've got club face, weight distribution. So I don't want to be in the toes or the heels. If I were to be too much in the heels to start with, I might move towards the toes. If I'm too much in the toes, I might stay there, or I might elevate the body. Not good. Club, weight distribution, handle height. Here's another key component of the setup. You can do this in front of the mirror, or you could just get yourself into a position where you've tilted from your hip and your arms and hands hang, okay? From there, if I drew a vertical line down from the shoulder with this club, you can see now that dissects a point through the middle of the hand versus anything in and anything out. Those positions start to fluctuate when people start to change the amount of severity of tilt in their setup, okay? So normally when you see somebody that's starting to sit back into the heels, you can see now the arm is no longer into that vertical position because that would feel too close. So that's a nice little checkpoint of the arm hanging down. Another little checkpoint you can do using a hanging club is we don't want to be over tilted in the setup. So we wouldn't want to be to a point where we're kind of leaning over too much. So you can see here's a line down from my armpit. That's out in front of the toes. I want to be in a position where my weight distribution is even and the amount of tilt I have gives me a line from the armpit through the knee and down into the front of the laces just here, okay? So we've got club face, we got weight distribution, we got handle height, we got arms vertical, and the severity of tilt is through that armpit line. It's
Can't be anything to remember. It's actually
pretty easy. But once you've got used to it doing it a few times, you will absolutely, boom, start to get some repetition. So remember, if you're at the driving range and you have a square, it's very easy just to kind of walk into it. So you know your square with the square. So that point's over there, but you do not have that when you're out on the golf course. That square is no longer there. So you need to have that process. So if you start with the face first, then you have the point of reference, yeah? All right. So we've run through a few key components of the setup there. So weight distribution, handle height, club face, etc. Okay. Other stuff that people can get wrong: shoulder alignment relative to that target line, and severity of right and left bend. So an appropriate amount of right bend for when you're hitting an iron shot. As a right-handed golfer, your right hand will be lower. So slide the right hand down into the middle of the palm. So it looks something like that. That should give you the correct amount of right bend. So if we start to get too much drop in the right side, that's going to affect our mobility quite considerably. It will probably encourage the low point to be back here. So the amount of right bend is just a little drop, okay? So make sure you just slide the right hand down. As you slide the right hand down, that will just drop this right side slightly, and that will give you the right amount of tilt. Also try and feel that everything is square, okay? So we've got the feet at right angles to the face line. We've also got the ability to be able to get the hips offline in setup. So sometimes when the ball position gets out of line, let's say the ball position gets too far forward, you might start to see too much left bend and also the hips and shoulders too left. By the time I've got the club to here, I'm back to square again, and the club's already traveled a long way. So we want to initiate the backswing with rotation. We want to get to a point where maybe the hips have turned to 45 degrees and maybe 90 in the top half. Lower body starts to unwind, keep the body turned, like so. You're going to throw that all out if you started from a compromised position. So some people will put this right foot back to encourage a draw, but actually their hips are left, which is no good. So we want to double check that everything's nice and square in the setup here versus anything that gets open or too closed or too much right bend and hips open. Okay, and one more tiny little bit of fine tuning, okay, for your setup. So a common fault, particularly if you're an IT person, where you're when you're actually at the desk all day, a lot of people are getting it rounded, so it's hard to maybe tilt from the hip. We want to make sure that we do tilt from the hip, but we also don't want to get rounded in the shoulders. Too rounded in the shoulders quite often encourages the action of the backswing to become a bit armsy. Here's the middle of my body, there's the arms getting active. The middle of my body and hips haven't really done a lot. They're too quick for the body. We want to try and make the body and arms kind of work together. It's almost like the body swings the arms and the arms don't swing themselves, okay? So we want to try and pin them back a little bit. You could whack the club behind here and just get used to just pinning them back. Anything that you could do in the gym that involves anything rowy is good. Just make sure that your shoulders are kind of relaxed versus anything that gets here. As soon as that starts to round, we're going to create that armsy looking swing. Not good. So try and get yourself into a position where you kind of feel that you tilt, soften, arms hang, and that'll get you into a nice neutral position for better golf shots. So there we have it, friends. Always remember that a good setup stems from good alignment first, okay? So don't overlook the alignment. Get the club in first, and then you can get yourself set up around that. Any adaptations that you make to your swing or are trying to make to your swing have got to be predicated on you setting up really, really well, okay? So if your setup's bad, you probably won't be able to make the swing changes, okay? So if you want to get your swing really good, you want to get super at golf, you've got to make sure you nail those boring things, all right? Cool, and I'll see you on the next one.